Welcome to the Initiative for Faith and Family. This is part 3 in our critical conversation on disabilities and specialized needs with our guest, Jared Leach. And wow, the first 2 parts have just been really beautiful. If you're just joining us right now, I encourage you to go back and watch parts 1 and 2, laying a biblical foundation for the image of God and understanding the heart of God in this arena. And then in our second part, we talked about belonging and inclusion and then also just being educated about some of these terms and some of the disabilities. So we're not just lumping this all into one. We're really trying to unearth a better understanding of what these people need and what our church needs because of them, and helping us really bring the two together. And so this third part is really going to get practical and helping us understand what are some of the next steps we can take and practical things that we can do. So Jared, thanks for being with us for part 3 of this conversation.
I'm so excited for this one too,
Yeah.
because this is, I think, going to be a lot of the questions people have. It's
Yeah.
like,
Where
this
do we
is
start?
great, but
What
where
do
do
we
we
do?
start?
Yeah, like we're inspired. Now we want to get equipped and we want to go out and like really support these families and these individuals. And I think that's a little bit of where I want to start, is just thinking about some of the people in our ministries, whether they're the kids, the teens, or the adults in our churches, but the family, the context of the family, and how do we come alongside and bring inclusion and belonging for them? Because I see a lot of these families, and when they come in on a Sunday or Wednesday night or Friday night, and they can look burdened or just tired, exhausted. They're full-time caregivers, and I think they also maybe feel estranged from the greater population. And and maybe we can't just sit over coffee and have the same stories about our 6-year-old,
Yeah.
children. Maybe we feel we don't know how to approach, or they don't know how to approach. But give us some give us just some guardrails of like, how do we bring inclusion for the family and the
Yeah.
parents and the grandparents and people who are supporting them?
This is one of the things that I don't think I still don't understand what each family goes through. And I just want to honor that. Like, families go through a lot that we just never see.
Yeah.
But even professionally, you receive the kid, you work with the kid, you give the kid back, and that's it. You don't see what goes on. You don't often see what families walk through. But my wife and I were asked, a good friend of ours, they had a son with Down syndrome, and they needed to go overseas. And so my wife and I were mom and dad for 2 weeks, and it was about the hardest thing I've
Wow.
ever done, because you got to get them to school, you got to feed them. And, I'm sitting here and we're having a dysregulation over brushing teeth. And I'm like, looking like the bus is coming in 10 minutes, buddy.
Yeah.
You got to brush your teeth. And, these little battles that we don't see, the big battles that we don't see, oftentimes, if when the child's born, they're in the NICU for months, or they have, surgeries when they're little infants, and it's a miracle
Mm,
that they're around. And it's complex. And
it's
I think
complex.
honoring the complexity is huge. I think, again, we'll touch on it. We touched on it before, and I just want to touch on it once, but just that humility piece, just being a student of the family is really important, and honoring them for what they've gone through, honoring the siblings. For a lot of
Yeah.
times, they don't get as much attention. They don't get as much care because their sibling with a disability is taking a lot of that. And so, they're not seen and they feel isolated. And oftentimes those siblings grew up to be really good humans. You see the path of walking along their sibling with the disability, just creates so much power and resilience in that. But in the moment, they're not seen. They don't always feel like they belong. And they're starving for
Mhm.
attention too, and it's tough. So honoring the siblings as well is something I think gets missed a lot. And the parents who have been working so hard, who don't have time to go out with their friends. Sometimes it's hard to get a babysitter because a lot of
Yeah.
babysitters aren't willing to walk through it. So they've been caregiver nonstop for so long. We have a parent in our church that they're son has epilepsy, and so they have him hooked up to a monitor at night, and that thing beeps when he rolls over. So they're waking up
Wow.
constantly through the night, and he's 28. It's been years and years and years of this. Some of our older attendees, they're 30, 40, and their parents have been parents for much longer than most parents get to be before they're empty nesters, and so they need to be honored for the longevity of their parenting and
Yeah.
their steadfastness in providing for their child for 40, 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
It's a huge commitment. It's a lifelong commitment, as I think all parents should be lifelong committed parents,
For
but
sure.
to them
It's under their
they
roof.
don't get it.
They don't have
Yeah.
the empty nester phase kind
Hmm.
of thing. Yeah.
And so they're constantly walking through it. So it's tough. We had a little girl with Down syndrome. We integrated her, and the dad just came up to our buddy and said to her, like, "You're doing a ministry for her. You're discipling her, but you're also ministering to us because we get to step back. We get to go into church as adults and be filled up,
Yeah.
and we haven't gotten that for years."
Wow.
And so you're giving an immense gift to parents to take, an hour and a half off and go get filled up. And that's something that many of these parents don't get.
Well, when you were sharing that 80% of churches don't have any form of ministry to just families with disabilities or specialized needs, that there's a lot of people who are not getting to go to church as well,
Yeah.
which then creates isolation for those families.
Yeah, I keep looking for this statistic, but I think it's just hard to get that statistic of how many families are really out there not being able to get in. And part of that is due to they've tried and they've been told no, and they've tried again and they've been told no, and that carries a lot of heartache, a lot of church hurt.
Yeah,
Sometimes they don't feel like they can bring their individual in to the church because they're hard. They have things that make them hard to care for, and they're just worried. Sometimes it's trust. Do I trust my individual,
sure.
to be in the church? Can they take care of it? Them. Can they keep them safe? And so those are all questions that have to be answered for a family to come in and um, be in the church and be a part of it. But the other side of that is really beautiful too. When you have a family that gets respite, the siblings are getting attention in their classes, the individuals getting discipled at their level, and you're doing full family discipleship,
Wow.
and
That's right.
it's powerful, and so that becomes at home. It can save marriages. It's amazing.
Wow. That's true. The siblings, the individual, and the parents are all being ministered to at the same time. That's beautiful. Talk to me a little bit about finding, locating volunteers, because maybe many of them are like young Jared who says, "Nope, I'm
Yeah,
good."
yeah,
How do we present this in our churches to find volunteers? Of course, we're praying that God will soften hearts and reveal His heart for this and those people, just like God did that in you. But how do we go about finding these individuals who can support a ministry? Because anybody who's listening right now who's saying, "Okay, this I feel called to do this. I want to do this in my church," they can't. They're not a one man show. They can't do that by themselves.
yeah,
How do we
yeah.
find these people?
Absolutely. I mean, I guarantee that most churches will have someone that does it professionally or has, worked with a sibling, which is great. But on the other side, there really is no requisite to doing this work. And
I like that.
I like to frame it, especially if you're just talking about one individual. Like, we need one individual to walk alongside someone with, this. And some people, if you don't love ministering to 20 individuals and you want a really deep relationship with someone and just walk and help
Mm.
someone, that tends to stir someone's heart, like, oh, I can just worry about the
Yeah.
one sheep. I got that. And that was something that I really loved. I loved just getting really deep with one individual. And so when you frame it like that, like, we need someone to disciple one on one with an individual who's 6. They have Down syndrome. This is what they need. This is that is a really easy first step. And oftentimes, hearing about what the individual can do and who they are also helps already break a couple barriers. Because if you just
Mm,
say they have special needs, that could be anything. I don't know
that's
how to
true.
help that, but if they're in a wheelchair and they just need me to push them and help them move around, I can do that. That's
Yeah.
easy. Um, and so framing it that
So
way
really
helps.
specific, being more specific than general. Yeah, I'm guilty of that. Probably being just more general, throwing it out there like, "Hey, we need buddies for our special needs program." But what does that really mean? That's good.
Yeah.
And framing it with the positive side. You get to disciple one student. You don't have to worry about class control or teaching up front or all the other things. It's just this one. That's beautiful discipleship.
Hmm.
And there are people who have that. So let's say they say yes. Then
Yeah.
how do we train them?
Yeah. No, that's such a good question. There's a lot of resources out there. And so I do recommend, you can find best tips for Down syndrome. It's a quick Google and you can get 4 to 5 really practical tips.
Okay.
So if you're just looking small, I don't know how to do this, let's look at it. Go to the internet and find that disability and look it up. Do a little bit of research and give that volunteer a few practical tips.
Okay.
Um, that changed my life. Just doing a little bit of research. It was like, oh, let's try this. Let's
Yeah.
try that. I think understanding and letting that volunteer know that, it's okay to make mistakes. We're going to try it. We're going to try these few things. You're not in it alone. I think oftentimes I have to walk alongside my volunteers and just check in and make sure that they're good and give a few suggestions and see them just as much as I'm seeing that individual helps a
Yeah.
lot too, because it's not always easy to walk alongside someone who has behavior. And so talking it through at the end of the day and just listening and giving a few suggestions can be really powerful as well. Um,
Do you generally do like a meetup with the parents and the volunteers? Is that something that you suggest would be helpful?
Definitely. I'm
Okay.
so glad that you said that, because oftentimes we will meet with the parent and the buddy, and then I'll ask the parents to give suggestions to that buddy because the parents know them best. The parents have strategies and things they've done for so long. And so having the parent do a little bit of that education too helps a lot because I
Yeah.
could teach all I want about best practices for those with special needs, but the parents know the best practices for that specific individual.
Yeah.
And so if you need a place to start, that's huge. It's just getting the parents involved. If you have a professional in your church who works with special needs or
Yeah.
who's even just been an aide in a classroom,
Tap into that.
tell them, like, ask them what's 3 to 5 best practices, and they'll give you. Just here, I think a few things is just structured, simple language is one of the things that I really emphasize. Talking clear and slow and concise can really help. Being patient, those things go a long way, like a really,
Tone,
really long way. Yep.
gentleness and
Gentle, even
tone.
tone,
Yeah.
making sure that you're staying regulated and calm. No matter what they're doing, they co regulate. So they're watching their adults. So if you're calm, generally they're calm as well. And then just kind of having an exit plan if they dysregulate,
Yeah.
finding a quiet space. It doesn't always have to be a big sensory room. It can be a corner with just a couple pillows and a blanket that we
Yeah.
can cozy up in if we dysregulate.
So that's another great practical step for churches to find a space that people can go to regulate. And you're calling it a sensory room. Can you tell us why you call it a sensory room? And then can you tell us how to create one if we don't have one in our churches?
Absolutely. Yeah. So a sensory room is just a room, or it could be a space or a corner that is just sensory friendly. So it is not stimulating. So you're
Okay.
looking at dimming lights. You're looking at it being hopefully quieter, kind of sectioned off. If you got to think about it being like almost like a little cozy space where I feel comfortable. I have my space and I feel a little sectioned off. Just like if I don't want to be around people, I go to my room,
Yeah.
and I relax, like
Right.
away from people. And so it's a space away from stimulation.
So maybe
And
fluorescent lights off and maybe some
yeah,
lamps in there for lighting.
yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Um, and then you look at adding some sensory stimulation that's really good and regulating. So, different textures is a place to start, different weights. So you can fill a sock with rice and it becomes really heavy, and that's a super simple way. And they just hold it and it's heavy and it feels really good. If you have a budget for a swing, get a swing. Back and forth motion is one of the most calming, regulating things you can do. So it's
So
just a
those soft
space to
swings, right?
cuddle in, cozy
Yeah.
in, and the back and forth motion is really regulating. And
They have
so,
weighted blankets. They have weighted stuffed animals.
and thankfully, a lot of the sensory friendly stuff is becoming a little bit more like known. And
Yeah.
a lot of people I know who are my age are even getting weighted blankets for themselves because it feels good.
After surgery, I had surgery a couple of years ago, and somebody brought me a weighted blanket, and I was like, this is the best thing
the
ever.
best thing. I mean, like you said, sometimes adults can use fidgets too. Like it's just, we need that sensory stimulation just as much. So removing bad stimulation and adding in, sensory stimulation that's helpful, that's calming, and that they can choose, because adding choice to and letting them figure out how they need to regulate is a powerful skill to build as well.
I love this. And we're going to put resources at the end of this podcast. We're going to have resources on the website that will be some of the books that you will tell us in organizations. And then maybe even we can have one that is how to set up a sensory space or a room. And I know oftentimes people say like, oh, we don't have that. We're a small church or something. But to your former point, like giving preferential treatment, and maybe something's being used for some other purpose that now we sacrifice that to be used for this. So it's not a matter of do we have it, but will we create that? Will we make this a priority?
Yeah. Taking that commitment to say we're going to do this and we're going to do it, well, and there might be a cost. It might create uncomfortableness in the other friends. They're not used to somebody being in their space with a special need. And if they dysregulate that, that's going to take some time for those kids to get used to that. And so there is a little bit of a cost, and it takes commitment. It takes elevation, and it takes a little bit of creativity and reliance on the Lord for sure.
Yeah.
But I promise the other side of this is way more beautiful, because those individuals, the other children who are in that room experiencing that, they're going to have greater empathy. They're going to have a greater understanding of how to care for the least of these. Their own fears around the disabled and special needs population is going to be even greater. And they will grow up to be individuals who are going out and seeking out the least of these. And so you're discipling every child in that room on what it means to be Christ's servant and to be servant leaders. And a lot of times these children, as the child with special needs grows, they grow and they become a peer partner, and our buddies drop off. They're not needed anymore because the peers support the individual.
Wow,
and so there was a point where I was discipling an individual with Down syndrome for 5 years, and I wasn't needed anymore.
Yeah.
And that's the greatest feeling. You're like, you're good.
Wow.
Your peers have you.
Yeah.
I'm no longer needed.
I love that. So if somebody was going to start, they could think about starting with what we maybe call a buddy system. It's that one-on-one discipleship. Then there's also the option of having a class that they can check into where they're going to hear God's word taught, and they can integrate maybe a blend. They can be in there, but then they can maybe go in for worship or different things. So a buddy system only, a class and a buddy system for those who are going to be part of it. And then maybe a full spectrum would be the buddy system, a class they could go into, and a sensory room for dysregulation, right? Would that be like the full?
That would be the full suite of like, you got everything, because I mean, you could be anyone's buddy, and that works. If you know of 1 to 2 individuals, maybe 4 to 5 individuals in your church that you want to, minister to, then do buddies. You just need, 4 to 5 volunteers,
Right.
which can be hard, to be honest, to find that level of commitment, but it'll come. And I pray all the time, like, Lord, I need someone to fill this.
Yeah. Start somewhere.
But
Yeah.
start somewhere,
Yeah.
if you just know you've talked to one family, they come in and they have an individual special needs, start there. Just
Yeah.
start with the one and let it grow.
Yeah.
Sometimes families are willing to, one parent can be the buddy this week even, and next week the other parent does it, or a sibling can do it. Start there. Start
Yeah.
getting them in with the family. If you want to do the class, start with a classroom and make half of it a sensory space and the other half a classroom space. That's what I did as a special education teacher. I needed both. And so I just split that room in half,
Okay.
and half is sensory and half is a classroom space.
Okay. We can get creative.
You definitely have to engage
and we have
that.
to ask the Lord, like, help me think outside the box, right?
Yeah.
Let's close by talking about some of the fun things. So I know at Christmas you do this big kind of breakfast or brunch, and you invite the parents and the students, and they're all together. And what are some of the ideas that we can do? I know there's an all abilities night you've started at your church. Talk to me about some of the fun communal things that we can do outside of maybe the education and the regular churchy stuff.
Yeah, I love celebration, right?
Yeah.
I love, again, elevating. Luke 14, invite in those people to a party. And so that's my favorite model is let's celebrate these people for who they are. Let's pour out our love. If it can be the, neurotypical general population saying, we recognize you, we see you, and we're gonna have some fun. Man, that's world changing. And a lot of them don't experience that. They don't experience getting out of, whatever classroom that they're stuck in and being celebrated in a different space. And it can be really refreshing.
Yeah.
You see their complexions and they're just like, I'm loved, I'm known.
Wow.
And that's immense. And so we do some celebration here. Our Christmas party is all about them and loving them. Night to Shine is a huge organization around our nation where they just throw a big prom night for teens and adults with special needs. And it's just a party. Yeah. Like, throw a party for them. It's amazing. Our sports night is so much fun for me. I have a great time. We're just playing. And it can be so dignifying because sports is not a place where those with special needs often succeed. And so, when we're saying that you can do it and we can have some fun and just throw a ball around, it's easy. Let's throw a ball around. Let's shoot some hoops. Let's just have some fun, kick a ball, build community, recognize that you're awesome, and we're going to have some fun together. It kind of makes it less serious, and that can be really refreshing, I think, for everyone, is we're just people and we're just having fun. And it's really beautiful when it's simple. And
for your all abilities nights, this is the sports nights, right? And how do you create accommodation for games, or like, where would somebody find that information of what do we even do? Like, if we're going to do a sports night, how do we even put one together?
Yeah. Again, I just start with what is the sport? What are the things that maybe you do for everybody else? And then you look at, for us, it's just, let's make things a little softer. I think that helps a lot. A little less serious, a little bit more friendly.
Cooperative, more than competitive,
exactly,
perhaps.
Yeah. So we're not looking at really doing anything for points or doing anything competitive or team-wise, but let's do something that builds relationship between people. So we're going to do a few games where we're just tossing things gently to each other. I'm looking at buying, foam balls instead of the actual serious basketball or the actual, volleyball. But, instead of a volleyball, let's get a beach ball, something that we can, throw and float. That's big. That's a big target for them to be able to hit. We have a giant blow up, beach ball that our kids in wheelchairs can kick, because they can't reach a small little soccer ball, but they can hit a big,
like, it's a 5 foot,
it's big. Yeah. And, you just have to be creative a little bit. Again, get a yoga ball. That's a big ball, just find things, go look in your basement sometimes for old things, pool noodles are great. We use pool noodles to make tracks on the gym floor for someone in a wheelchair to, roll around in as the kids are running around them.
Yeah.
Or a pool noodle can be a hockey stick if you want to, and you can, whack a beach ball with the pool noodle and it's
Right.
hockey.
Yeah.
It's
Have
just looking
nets.
at the thing and just accommodating it and tweaking some things. And it takes trial and error too. You ask an individual to throw a ball and it's too heavy and they can't lift it. And so you just see that happen and you say, okay, let's find something lighter and try that until you see the smile, blow up across their face as they just took a ball and threw it for the first time, and everybody's cheering for them. And so it's really special as, we're pouring love into these individuals, and they don't experience that often, as they are seen more oftentimes as a burden or something that, requires extra effort. And so.
Well, and those types of events feel like maybe a good first step for a volunteer. Like if we say, like, we're hosting an all ability sports night, or we're hosting Night to Shine, or the Christmas brunch, just come and be a part of it. And they can see, meet the families, meet the students, and see like, oh, wow, this could be really fun, engaging. That might be a great first step.
Yeah, because you're walking in there with no requirements on yourself, and you're
that's
just
true.
meeting people,
That's
right?
true.
And then you're watching the, professionals, quote unquote, or people who've been doing it for a while. You're watching them and you're like, oh, that's not that hard.
Yeah.
I could
whack
do that.
A ball with a pool noodle.
I could push a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Or even behavior. When you see someone just calmly say, we're going to do, we're going to go for a walk and then we're going to come back and try again.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that's not as complicated as I thought.
Yeah.
I can do that. It really simplifies it, and it breaks barriers when you just walk in, you see, oh, you're a human too. Oh,
Yes.
you're a person too. Oh,
Yes.
you have that thing, but you're just you, and you see those labels drop off and their name come more into view as they're recognized as just a person. And then when you get back to Sunday, we're high-fiving in the hallways, people
Right.
are like, hey, Tommy, it's good to
Yes.
see you. And that's what we're doing, is we're a community now. And we're not so much a
community.
program. And I think that's the thing that, really integrates into the DNA of a church now, because they're welcomed in as anyone else, as a community member, as someone who contributes to the community.
That's right.
And it's not just a program. It's not just a legal obligation or a moral obligation. You're just a part of our community, and as part of our church as any, individual or image of God in our church.
I love that. That becomes part of the DNA. Well, Jared, this has been so rich. Thank you so much for being here. I feel like we could continue this conversation, and maybe we just need to in the next conversation that we have in podcast, but there's so much more to learn and grow, and it really just takes a heart that says, I'm willing to step in and let God lead us. And what does God have for us in our church setting with the people he's given us and who he's entrusted to us, and to really partner with these families and help them feel included too. I've personally learned so much, and I'm so grateful. And I know you've learned so much. And like I said, we'll have some more resources on the website, and maybe even some pictures, because I know sometimes visuals are helpful of knowing how to set up a space. And so thank you so much for being part of this very important, critical conversation on disabilities and specialized needs. And thank you to Jared Leach for being with us and educating us and tendering our hearts towards this topic. And if you want more information about any of this, resources, maybe some helpful guides for you, next step research for books and articles, and even resources and organizations that can help you, you can go to our website at the-iff.com. Thank you for being with us.